Okay, well, yeah, it's hard to tell how many people are here actually, but I know it's just turning 7 right now, uh, and I just wanted to people who come in will just have to catch up with us. But I wanted to talk to you guys about DC Cannabis Business Association. We've been around for several years. If you could mute yourself, unless you're speaking, that would be great. Thank you. So we've been around for several years, mostly working. We're a 501 for C4, a nonprofit organization, and C4 means we can do a lot of advocacy work, which is what we've been doing for the last few years. As you probably know, the last few every 18 or 24 months, there's a whiff of the Harris rider being removed, um, but it's never happened. And so we get started, we get all pumped up, we're getting ready, and then deflated, and we have to start all over again. So we've been working pretty hard in the last few years. Some of our board members, Rachel Donlin, you can see her. She's a huge consumer. You've probably seen her if you have a store. She's been going to a lot of the various stores in the last few months. James Salt, he's our secretary board, and he's controlling the panel today. Uh, he's controlling the Google Meet. Um, Mustafa Ahmed is our vice president of the board, and he's going to be moderating the questions to Director Fred Musali from ABCA. I guess I guess that's how they're going to change the name. Alcohol Cannabis Control Board or something. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe he could fill us in exactly how they're going to change the name. But um, we've been pretty instrumental in trying to, you know, work with what we have, which is the gray market, which is not ideal. Um, and I want to applaud all of you people who've bucked the system and stepped up and said, we can't wait for the laws because the laws are moving too slow. And that's exactly how laws get changed in this country, is by doing what you call it, good trouble, right? That phrase that Lewis created, good trouble, means you have to step in when some laws are unjust. To change the laws, you have to break the laws so that people can see that it's been done. And we've demonstrated to the city that we can break the law and not have any problems. There hasn't been any kind of, crime uptick and, you know, violence around cannabis trade and the cannabis business. And it's only been making people happy. And um, so we've already proven to them that it's possible and they don't need to be afraid. The stigma still needs to be removed from a lot of people so that they can just relax and go ahead and work with the licensing. So we've invited the director of ABCA here, Fred Musali. You can see him somewhere on your screen. I know people will be coming in as we go, so just let that go. And if you have any, stay muted. If you need to speak or you want to speak up, you can raise your hand, and then James will let you in. Or you can write in the chat box. In the bottom right corner, there's a little square that says chat with everyone, so you can hit something. If you have a question or something that you want Mustafa or James to bring up, then go ahead and write it in the chat box, and they'll do that. But if you want to ask it yourself, then you'd have to raise your hand, and also you would have to put your video on to ask that question. Um, so I know we have 80 some people registered, and we're more than halfway there right now. So we're not going to hold up our time with Director Musali, and I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Mustafa, you want to get started with some questions? I'm sorry, Director Musali, welcome. Thank you for being here. I don't know if there's other people from your organization here that we could introduce, but thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. It's really difficult for us to get the DC government to listen to the citizens. I mean, we voted for, Initiative 71 several years ago and have been fighting, to break open the retail laws and the adult use laws ever since. And since we voted on it, we think we should be the ones to benefit from it. And so far we've have been struggling with that. So we're glad you're here, and hopefully you'll be able to enlighten us as how it's going to move forward. And that's why everybody's here, because they want to hear from you directly. So thank you for coming. And Mustafa, do you want to say anything?
Sorry.
I was wondering if Director Musali wanted to say something before we just go into the questions.
Thank you. Yeah, let me just introduce myself quickly for everyone. So my name is Fred Musali. I'm the director of the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration. Want to thank Lisa from the DC Cannabis Business Association for having me here today. As I think you talked about, Lisa, the name of the agency under the proposed legislation would be the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Association, and then the ABC board would be the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Board. So I think the main reason I'm here is the council has recently taken action on the Medical Cannabis Amendment Act. And so obviously that legislation will significantly change the way medical cannabis operates in the district. And so I think we want to have a little bit of a discussion about that today.
All right, I'm going to mute myself. Go ahead, Mustafa.
Director Musali, how are you doing? So Mustafa Ahmed. So I'll start with the questions. The first one is, when you testified before Charles Allen's Judiciary Committee, you said you supported the bill as submitted by the mayor. What aspect of the committee print modifications that the Judiciary Committee made to the Medical Cannabis Amendment do you support or not support? And can you elaborate on your thinking about this reform?
Mustafa, thanks for the question. Yeah, I think the most important thing to start with is the Medical Cannabis Amendment Act of 2021 was introduced in February 2021. So that was pretty much about 21 months ago. So a lot has changed in the medical cannabis program over the last 21 months. The thing we're excited about the bill is its innovative legislation that highlights the need for educational tastings. As you know, delivery has become extremely important in the medical cannabis industry. So we're excited about how that highlights delivery. I know, I think some of your members have asked about on-site consumption. And so the bill does create an on-site consumption permit where dispensaries could have qualifying patients come and smoke or consume cannabis. So that's something we've heard a lot about, especially with federal housing restrictions. So we're really excited about that. I think in terms of things that have changed and we looking at the bill here, I think we're excited about, one, changes to making it easier for returning citizens to either work at a medical cannabis facility or own a medical cannabis facility. As we're talking about social equity and the harm on the war on drugs, we think it's really important that returning citizens be able to work or own businesses. So we're really happy about that. And then I think, which we'll be talking about a little bit today, the bill is recently out of the committee, creates a manufacturer's license, and we think that the creation of a manufacturer's license is really helpful in terms of allowing small businesses to have an opportunity to be successful in the medical cannabis industry.
Thank you. My next question, if the Medical Cannabis Amendment Act is passed, do you have any indication of the specific factors ABRA might consider in its analysis of the need for additional medical licenses, and how long do you anticipate this analysis will take? Additionally, do you have any sense of the number of licenses that will be limited by ward, and how would you typically make this kind of determination or assessment?
Thanks for that question, Mustafa. So I think one thing to highlight so everybody knows is currently by statute from the DC Council, we're only allowed to have 8 dispensary licenses, and those are all have been applied for. So back in February 2021, with the support of the mayor, we asked to increase the number of dispensaries. We didn't believe that 8 was a sufficient number. We still support that in terms of increasing dispensaries. So I'm not sure we need a retail study to say that we need to increase the number of dispensaries in the city. I think we figured that out. But in terms of what we need to look at, I think some of the key factors that need to be looked at are, one, the proximity of dispensaries to schools and rec centers, not having dispensaries in residential areas, and then I think also not having dispensaries that are open to the public within a certain footage of each other. I don't think we want to have a situation where, all the dispensaries are on the same block. So I think those are some of the things we can look at rather than, figuring that we only need 8 dispensaries.
Got it. Thank you. My next question is, not everyone wants to have a big dispensary or warehouse cultivating farm. There are other types of licenses that are needed to satisfy the current cannabis community, like edible and concentrate processors, event planners, consumption lounges, delivery services, touring companies. Would you agree that micro licensing, as suggested by DC Cannabis Business Association, under the wing of the medical program, is a good solution?
Thanks, Mustafa, for the question. So one of the things we've tried to do is be innovative and creative under the medical cannabis program. So you mentioned the on-site consumption permit. That's supported here. You mentioned delivery. We've created delivery and tried to promote delivery. One of the things I think the micro license you talked about that's in this bill that we've tried to promote is manufacturing. So as we go to increase the medical cannabis market, to be successful, it's going to be important that we increase the variety of edibles and products available to patients that can be sold in dispensaries. And that's where small businesses can play a major role. We can talk about what you call that type of license, but it's going to be really critical that we create an opportunity for small businesses. And we believe along those lines, social equity applicants, that social equity applicants should have an opportunity to get manufacturing licenses and play a key role in manufacturing products that can be sold at dispensaries.
Got it. Thank you. My fourth question, does ABRA plan to reopen the application period for testing laboratories? And if so, do you have an estimate of when?
Thanks, Mustafa. We do. We absolutely believe that we need testing labs. And so you're going to see the opening again of the testing lab applications in the next several weeks. We've been trying to get 2 testing labs in the district. And so that application process will be rolling out in the next several weeks as we try to bring testing labs to the district.
Got it. Thank you. Fifth question. Who has the most knowledge in the DC government, including ABRA, about cannabis lawmaking? And are you reaching out to them? Do you talk to other states regarding how they're running their cannabis market or which rules, laws have worked for them? And do you see a value in reaching out to people or organizations in the DC cannabis community for this information?
That's a lot in there, Mustafa. That's a lot of questions there. So I'll break it down in a couple areas. So in terms of looking at other states, absolutely, we look at best practices in other states. Some of the ideas that we've recently used to improve the medical cannabis program have come from other jurisdictions. We recently implemented the non-resident 30-day temporary registration that allows non-residents to register that was mirrored off of looking at laws in Hawaii and Mississippi. We belong to the Cannabis Regulators Association that have been very helpful in terms of having conversations virtually and otherwise to get about best practice in other states. In terms of our board, we're fortunate to have several board members that are knowledgeable. We have board member Rafi Crockett, who's a wonderful addition to the board and is a valuable resource on medical cannabis issues. And we have our chair, Donovan Anderson, and other board members. Additionally, we're fortunate to be able to work with other government agencies on their cannabis issues, whether it's on environmental issues or health issues or other types of things. We have, individuals at other agencies that we work at in order to get best practices in place.
Thank you.
And real quick, I think the other part, just want to highlight, talking to stakeholders and organizations is critical. We have this medical cannabis industry continues to take strides forward. It's imperative that any changes we make, we understand the impact of those changes on stakeholders.
Great. Thank you, sir. Sixth question would be, there are no limits on alcohol purchases or possession, which is much more dangerous and harmful than cannabis. So what do you hope to achieve with the purchase limits or storage limits, like 2 ounces, or now trying to get to 8 ounces?
Sure. Well, the 8-ounce limit is in the statute, so we pretty much enforce that. I think as we have this conversation today, there may be some items, this could be one, where you may talk to the council and say, hey, why do we have this limit? Or is this something that, the legislature could change? We have the ability administratively by rule to change things that aren't specific in the statute. Here, the 8-ounce limit is in the statute. Keep in mind, it was 4 ounces. And so initially 2, I think to 4 and now 8. So that may be something you want to raise with the council.
Got it. Thank you. Number 7 question, the DC residents voted to legalize cannabis with Initiative 71. We should be the ones who benefit from licensing. Will you be able to control who gets licenses and give extra point for long-term DC residents? And do you care if big companies like multi-state operators come in or not?
Great question, Mustafa. So what we believe in the agency is asked the council is we believe as we kind of move forward, particularly whether it's dispensary, manufacturer, delivery, whatever type of license, that we need to look at putting those licenses to social equity applicants. So obviously we need to define what a social equity applicant is. I think we've talked about making sure that we're issuing licenses to those individuals that have been negatively impacted and harmed by the war on drugs, right? So I think that's going to be critical as the council looks to define what a social equity applicant is. But clearly we want to have licenses that are set aside for social equity applicants, including DC residents. Obviously we want our small businesses to thrive.
Great, thank you. Question number 8, do you agree that by giving licenses to local growers and producers, that these businesses can supply the retail license holders?
So I think as we talked about, I think the manufacturing license, whatever you want to call it, in terms of small businesses, is going to be critical to the process moving forward, right? So if we're going to have an increase in dispensaries, obviously we want to make sure we have an available array of products for the dispensaries to sell. And so small businesses are going to play a major role in that. So that's what we think the value of the manufacturer licenses.
Got it. Thank you. Number 9, there are 10 cigar lounges in DC. Will you create a license for off-premise from a different dispensary, smoke consumption lounges for cannabis? Some of us need to get out of the residential homes and socialize while enjoying our favorite device for relaxing.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something we've been asking the council for since February 2021. So the bill has what's called an on-site consumption permit that would allow dispensaries to have on-site consumption. That's something we support.
Thanks, sir. Number 10 question. There is something in the Amendment Act that says there will be educational tasting endorsement allowing cannabis edible classes, but it states that attendees, students, will not be able to take home what they make. Don't you think if they bake hot brownies in a class that they should be able to take them home, especially since they can't be sold at the facility?
So this is another one of those items that you might want to bring up with the council in terms of changes you'd like to see to the bill. The bill does allow for the on-site consumption permit for you to bring purchased cannabis home. So if you bought cannabis at the dispensary and didn't finish and had unused cannabis, you could bring that cannabis home in a sealed container. So that might be something you want to talk to the council about as it relates to product that, that's been made. I think the brownies was what was brought up in the example as part of the education class.
Question number 11. Where can we learn about the licensing requirements? Where will they be published?
So once the hopefully, knock on wood, the council passes the bill in December, we'll put those requirements on our website. We'll obviously give notice in the event there's licenses available, as well as the process in the DC Register. We also will schedule several information sessions where we'll go over the requirements based upon what the council passes.
Got it. Question number 12. What sort of homework is the agency doing to look at the current market, I-71 market included, to ensure that necessary number of testing labs, cultivation centers, dispensaries, and manufacturers will be established to meet the bill?
Thanks. So we do have a program analyst that has been looking at some of these issues. I'll kind of break them down into a couple different categories. Obviously, we know we need testing labs, and so that's why you're going to see the testing lab open application period start in the next few weeks, as we need to do what we can to get, if we hopefully can get 2 testing labs. Obviously, in terms of the need for a variety of edibles and products, obviously we've talked about the manufacturing license because we think that's a value add for small businesses in terms of getting that out. Obviously, we believe that a number of dispensaries should increase. The number of 8 isn't sufficient.
Thank you, sir. Question number 13. What is ABRA's position on due process and transparency regarding transitional license and transitional license plan or plans? Is there a right to cure defects in the application? And what is the appeal process if applications and plans are denied?
Sure. Based upon whatever law the council passes, when people apply for a license, they'll get in writing what they need that's missing in the event that there's not a scoring process. People are an applicant's entitled to due process in terms of why their application would be denied. For the recent scoring applications we did, in an effort to be transparent, we gave out the scores and let people see what their scores were. So if there's an issue with their application, we would tell them in writing. Our preference is, if there's not a scoring process, would be to work with applicants to have them cure any defects in their application. That would be our preference.
Thanks, sir. Question 14. Why do this type of meeting and votes about cannabis industry happen on such a short notice? Why aren't the people involved in the industry of I-71 more involved and made aware? How will you guys prevent big corporations from taking out small color business? And do you guys realize how many people will be unemployed for closing I-71?
A lot of questions there. Well, I mean, I think one of the things we want to do is open up how many licenses are available, including the social equity applicants. I think one of the things that's clear is we need to increase the number of dispensaries. Currently, there are no licensed dispensaries in Ward 5, by way of example. So I think that's helpful. In terms of hearings, that's a good question for the council. There was a hearing in November of 2021 on the medical cannabis bill. In terms of whether they need to hold another hearing, that would be a good question for them. Our goal is, if there's a bill passed, to make sure we get the word out, educate folks, have information sessions, let individuals know what the requirements are. But our main goal is to make sure, well, hopefully the council will increase the number of licenses available, including to social equity applicants.
Got it. Thank you. Question 15. What timeline is the council ABRA agency thinking when it comes to transitional licensing? Is there an estimate of what the application fee might be for the licensing process?
So there's no set fee established. How we look at this is the council, if they're going to pass a law, it would be passed in December, because any legislation that doesn't pass by the end of the year has to be introduced at the beginning of the next fiscal year. So assuming legislation is passed in December, we would start looking at an implementation plan in December. Any legislation that passes would have to undergo a 45-day congressional review period and would probably take effect at the end of February, somewhere around February.
Number 16, will there be any guardrails to ensure that new operators have access to products when they join the regulated market?
So clearly the expectation would be that cultivation centers would sell to new dispensaries. So as a new dispensary, we'd expect our cultivation centers to sell to them. And that's the current expectation, is that dispensaries are able to buy directly from the cultivation center.
Thank you for that, Director. Question 17, and I believe this is my last one. What is the justification for bringing in large out-of-state cannabis companies instead of supporting the growth of our own local market? And do you think DC residents aren't competent enough to run cannabis dispensaries themselves?
Actually, quite the opposite. The goal would actually be to have DC residents, DC businesses be able to apply for licenses. The goal is to allow social equity applicants to get these new licenses that become available. I think, if individuals have been impacted by the war on drugs, we should be doing what we can to make them licenses available to them as social equity applicants. So I think that's the goal that we're striving for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Lisa, can you hear me? I'm done with the questions.
Okay. So, Alan, if you can
Yes.
can you unmute? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Director, for being here tonight and giving your time for this.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry. My name is Alan Amsterdam. I'm one of the co-authors of Initiative 71. And my question to you is, does ABCA support Initiative 71 growers getting into the medical? Meaning we already have this small infrastructure of growers in the city that can grow cannabis. Obviously, they have to, it would be, based on testing and based on cleanliness, just like the other facilities. But to go to the council and to say, hey, we have all these people, this infrastructure here ready to go, as long as they comply with the same rules that the operating ones now, to get in, so that way we can get some social equity and get some home cultivators into the game immediately. I'm wondering if you guys support that.
So generally, I think a couple things. I think one is we want to do what we can to build and grow upon a regulated market, right? And I think that obviously we want to make sure we're doing what we can to have social equity applicants in the program. I think there's a recognition that we have a number of, operators currently in place. And so the question is, how do we bring existing operators into the fold, right? So I think that's important to look at how we do that. I don't know exactly what you're, real quick, Alan, I'll let you follow up.
If I'm growing out of my house and I want to apply for a license, would ABCA support Initiative 71 home cultivators, crossing over to become now cultivators to be able to sell to all the dispensaries in the city? So for example, in Initiative 71, you can grow up to 12 plants. Well, if we became medical and we had you say the average basement in the city is, 700 square feet. So home cultivation license would be separate from a micro license or anything you're talking about. They could do 700 square feet, a 700 square feet canopy and grow in there. And you guys would support that. So Initiative 71 growers could make a decision whether I wanted to stay in Initiative 71 and just grow for myself, or I want to grow for, this movement, but I can't afford to go get a big cultivation center. I don't have political connections. You know, a lot of people in there, you know, they just want to grow. They don't have these political connections like, you know, what's been going on. And frankly, there's no testing right now for any of the cannabis. There's no testing, you know, in the city at all. So everything's going rogue. So once the testing comes, you can get all the I-71 people that wanted to apply that could, you know, conform to you guys' rules and regulations into it. And would ABCA support that? It would, you know, really just a yes or no answer would be, you know, that kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, that's something I'd be happy to look at. I mean, I do think, you know, one of the things we've talked about is shared spaces and looking at ways to the point you've made in terms of just having, you know, having to get a large commercial space is finding ways to share space, kind of similar to like a shared kitchen model where, you know, operators could kind of work together, maybe share a space in order to kind of operate that way.
Well, from this last round, I had a group and we were about to go in there and have some developers, had some big people in the city that wanted to do it. There was 8 places with this, you know, 400 feet thing that really, they became kingmakers. So we went and we did this, you know, we applied, we got, you know, all the money together. We did everything. We weren't, you know, super rich like these multi-state operators, but we could handle ourselves. But then we went to the landlords and they were like, oh, this guy will give us 20. Will you give us 25,000? So basically all the people that applied for those last cultivation center licenses, you know, paid extra. And these kingmaker landlords, I think there was 8 of them, got to pick and choose, and only the richest survived. If, you know, I had a big group and they were like, we're not going to pay this ridiculous money. This is over, you know, that kind of thing. So these kind of things are such an impediment and have, you know, if something isn't changed, none of us are going to get in. You know, there's no places to grow in the city. You know, there's a moratorium in that one ward that ex-councilman member Alexandra put in, so you can't grow in Northeast. And where's warehouse spaces? So if you don't go to home cultivation, where are you going to go? You know, the council's not going to make rules where everybody can grow anywhere. They're going to be strict. So that's a way in to get the social equity and a way in to get the small guy in. Sorry. And that's, you know, my final. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Alan. I appreciate that. No, I mean, you do raise a good point. That's why one of the things I think if you see in this bill to fix one of the issues you raised was to allow for cultivation in Ward 5 again, because all the cultivation center locations are in Ward 5, but we weren't allowed to issue any cultivation centers in Ward 5. So what happens is because you can't go to Ward 5, everybody, you know, goes to the other wards. But I'm happy to continue the dialogue. I mean, that's why I'm here today. We're having a dialogue, discussion. You know, I don't claim that we have all the answers without talking to you and getting information. That's how you learn and figure out what path we need to go forward.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it today.
Okay. Aaron Rogers, did you want to have a question? Where are you there?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Aaron.
So my major concern is that you have been under, or not you, I apologize, but DC has been under this open enrollment, not accepting applications. My concern is once you all pass the laws, as I pay all my attorneys and continue forward as I do to try and get a hold of you all. By the way, thank you for taking this time. I've spent a lot of money to try and have people get a hold of you. You're very difficult.
Glad to be here, Aaron.
At what point, because you're saying the law would pass in December, you're sounding like it's pretty confidently going to go through. At that point, will that be when we are able to apply? And then at the February date, you're saying is when they're going to finally look at it? Like, how do we make sure that we are able to apply at the same time as everyone else?
Sure. Great question, Aaron. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about timeline just so everybody knows what I'm talking about and then process. So the legislation, if it's passed by the council, will be passed in December. So legislation that doesn't pass by the end of the year has to be reintroduced at the beginning of the next session. So assuming council passes legislation in December, it then has to be sent to the mayor for signature. If the mayor approves it, it then goes to the council for a 45-day congressional review period when Congress is in session, right? So when you add the days that Congress is in session, which don't count holidays, weekends, what have you, you're probably looking at around late February. So from our perspective, once we know that a bill is passing, let's just say December, early January, you know, we have to start working on implementing a bill, you know, once it's been approved, you know, and signed by the mayor. So obviously it's incumbent on us to schedule information sessions, get the word out, make people understand the process. and implement the bill. Part of our issue, and obviously we'll see what the final bill looks like, is to obviously make the application process a little easier. So one of the things we learned from the initial application process was that when we inherited the program from DC Health, they had what was called a letter of intent process, where you had to file a letter of intent that you applied to file an application. Well, I think the thing we found was, why do we have a letter of intent to say you're going to file an application? Just have an application period. So one of the other things, that we've looked at, and we'll see what the council ends up doing, is we prefer not to have, a scoring process. Obviously, a scoring process results in a more lengthy process. So we would prefer we don't have a scoring process. I think we've talked about, what our criteria are and things we'd like to see. And then, like I said, we'd prefer to have a straightforward application process. That's not overly complicated. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. Rachel, you have a question?
Hi.
Thank you, by the way.
Hi,
No problem. Thank you,
so-
Aaron.
Thank you so much for joining us. I think it's so important that you're opening up the dialogue and the lines of communication in this way. I appreciate having the opportunity to ask these questions and hope that you'll continue this dialogue. Would you be willing to, keep the community informed and give us the information? We at DCCBA, we want to be here to let people know what's going on. So would you be willing to let us know, rather than just having a task force suddenly coming out and finding out in the press and things like that? Like, let us know what's happening, if timelines change, what people need to get in and when, and that kind of thing. That's pretty much like what we want to do for the community, is to be that bridge so that people understand. And I'm glad to hear also, while I have the opportunity, I want to say I'm glad to hear that if people aren't able to get their applications approved, that you're telling them what's wrong with their applications and what the problems are. Conversely, I hope that you'll give those people an opportunity to tell you what's wrong with the system on their end and why they're having problems getting their applications processed as well. And maybe having that communication back and forth is what's going to make things move along. And when the rider is removed, everybody will be set up so that they can just, if they want to adjust into the recreational, or what I prefer to call adult use market, then they're ready to go. And their brand doesn't have to die at this time when they're doing so well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Okay. Jackson Farmer, go ahead.
There, Fred. Thanks for being here. I'm Jackson Farmer. I was actually the only testing lab applicant for this most recent licensing round.
Thanks for joining us, Jackson.
Yeah, so happy to be here. So you mentioned that you wanted to reopen the applications again in the next few weeks. Is there anything specific that's holding you back from just opening them like this week, considering there's not that much interest in the testing lab application? Just curious, how we can speed that along is all.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Jackson. Yeah, I think you'll see something pretty soon. We just need to make sure when we get it out, we have a little bit of notice so that, the day doesn't start, the next day when we announce it. We want to give people a little bit of lead time, get the word out. But you'll see something very soon.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jackson.
Okay, we have the next question from Capital Vape Supply. Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry about that. Joffrey Gibb from Capital Vape Supply. Thank you for taking your time here.
Thanks for being here.
You mentioned a couple of things in terms of new cultivation centers, new manufacturing centers, new licensing, and things like that. From what I understand about the medical licensing and the origin part of all of that with DC Cannabis and medical cannabis, how is that going to even work? How is that fathomable without even doing things like Alan has proposed? Everything has to be born in DC from seed to stem. and then also collected by an MPD officer at the end. None of the waste is produced. Like, so how do all these new licensing things happen? What is going to be changed in terms of the process of medical cannabis that allows for any of this new stuff, this new infrastructure that you're talking about introducing to all of us as applicants to even happen? Because at the right now, the medical dispensaries can't even keep up with demand that's been there since 2015. And now that we've diluted it more with the, souvenir memberships, as I call them, as a medical patient, we can't even get the medicine we need. So how does it all going to work in the grand scheme of things?
Sure. And I'm, like I said, I'm here for a continued dialogue. So if there's issues we have to talk about and address, let's do it. Our agency took over the medical cannabis program in October 20. So you may be aware of issues that I'm not aware of. I can tell you now that, I know when, prior to October 20, there may have been a supply issue, but I can tell you in terms of regular conversations with cultivation centers, at least what they're saying to us, is that there's, they have the ability to meet demand. But obviously I'm happy to continue a dialogue in terms of on that issue. But we currently have the ability to make edibles and sell edibles now, which we do. So obviously the purpose of the manufacturing license is to increase, the variety of edibles that are offered. Obviously delivery, came about during the pandemic in terms of the licensed dispensaries, and that's been something that we're very supportive of. I think if you look at what we've done with self-certification, we have self-certification for DC residents, and now we have self-certification for non-DC residents, where they're able to just self-certify that they need medical cannabis, and they're able to get a 30-day registration. But happy to have a discussion, further in terms of these new licenses. But the goal here is obviously to build upon the medical cannabis program, allow for innovation, allow for different types of business models to be successful.
Well, and I guess that's what my question is. What is going to change in the medical cannabis system that will allow for all of these new licenses to actually come about so that people can manufacture, people can cultivate? Is there going to be any way that like people can bring in product from outside to process, manufacture edibles from? Because as of right now, that's how the law states. So if you're going to have these new manufacturing centers, they have to then get it from a cultivation center. And if the cultivation centers are only be able to produce so much for the medical, you know what I mean? Like, is there going to be a change in some of the system that will allow for this expansion? Because the expansion will take some time. If you add 8 manufacturers and 8, dispensaries with only so many cultivation centers, how do we get it all done? Are we willing to look at the way, that's what my question is, are we willing to look at the way the medical system is set up now that will allow for all of these things that are possible for manufacturing licenses and cultivation licenses to even work out for us?
Sure. Well, we part of what we've done is make sure, identify issues and address the issues. So I'm happy to have those conversations and understand, what you all need for new licenses to do that. I'm happy to have that conversation. I think I need to better understand the issue and why current cultivation centers aren't able to meet that demand.
Okay, we have a few more people with their hands up, but I want to step in and say one thing. We did provide you with suggestions, and basically our suggestion to make this happen is to offer micro licensing that has smaller criteria than the big dispensaries and the big cultivator sites, so that we can do craft cannabis, we can do home cultivation and the smaller micro-sized businesses. And then we could also supply ourselves right here. We don't need to go outside and get anything because there's enough people. There's 80 people here right now, and that's half of the people who want to get a license right today. So when I look at the beer, wine, and liquor industry, there are so many various types of licenses. If you just change that word beer, wine, and liquor and put cannabis in there, we could have the exact same type of licenses. We have all of those types of businesses right here. We got the corner store with the beer and wine licenses. We got the grocery stores with the beer and wine licenses. We got liquor stores lining all up and down, like Georgia Avenue. Every block has a liquor store on Georgia Avenue. It's crazy that they're allowed so many. There's so many restaurants. There's so many consumption places where you can have beer, wine, and liquor. We need the same thing for cannabis. You really need to remove the stigma that it has to be a medical thing, because we're safer than alcohol. We're safer than even beer and wine. There's no headaches. There's no liver damage. There's no mean drunks, there's no mean potheads, I meant. There's mean drunks, but there's no mean potheads. The side effects, you might sleep it off, or you call for pizza delivery. And I mean, that's great for the economy, right? So our solution, our suggestion is to provide the ceiling lifted completely and provide licenses for all types of businesses. We have people here who just want to be event planners. We want to have someone has a wedding. They want to be able to get a license just for that one day to do that one event. We have delivery services. We have so many tourist companies. We have so many types of businesses. It's not that difficult. And it just sounds like you don't want to just say, okay, and I get it. But I'm thinking you could put them under the wing. Maybe it's a provisionary license. And then when the rider is lifted, all of a sudden we got new types of licenses that aren't under the medical program or something. But we have so many ideas. You just need to reach out to us. We can tell you what to do. It just seems so simple to us. And I'm sorry, I'm going crazy and I'm ranting right now. And I'm not going to let you respond. I'm going to have another person ask a question, and that's Stribble Treats. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Hi, Fred. Thank you so much for being here and having this forum for us.
Thank you.
Today.
Thanks for being here too.
My question has to do with, I don't even know if this would apply to you, but for the laws, what protection can be there for people considered an employee with a safety sensitive position? Because currently they have it, they can't use cannabis. It's illegal for them to use cannabis as an employee, and they get suspended, which is like a 90-day unpaid suspension. However, if you're tested positive with alcohol, it's only a 30-day unpaid suspension. So is there something that can be done for employees, especially for those who know the benefits of cannabis versus drinking alcohol?
Sure. Well, I mean, for the district government, there's been recent legislation passed to protect district and government employees. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about. Obviously, federal government's a little different. But clearly efforts have been made to protect district government employees. So, I mean, I think that's something that we're with you on. If we need to get, send Lisa legislation that's been passed recently on that, we can do that.
But does it cover people considered safety sensitive?
That I don't have it in front of me, but we can, I think somebody's sending a link. I think James might be sending a link, but we can make sure that, coordinate with Lisa to make sure that we get that out.
Okay, thank you. And then my follow-up for your outreach. Exactly how are you going to reach communities that have been disenfranchised?
Well, obviously this conversation is a start, right? So obviously we're going to, work with Lisa, other organizations, make sure we get the word out in terms of the process to apply when new licenses become available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so next we're going to go to Anthony Cheatham. Go ahead.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Anthony.
So I want to start with a quote that I saw in the Washington Post, posted September 15th, 2020. It says, although marijuana arrests have declined by more than half, African Americans still account for just under 90% of those arrested on all pot-related charges, according to a Washington Post analysis. So my question to you, Fred, is with this quote, it's clear that there's a lot of disproportion going on with Black and white people when it comes to weed. there any Are there any people of color and or Black people on the ABCA board that you speak of? And if so, if any of them are any of them consumers to know firsthand what's right and what's wrong for this plant?
Thanks, Anthony. I think to your questions, the answer is yes. And I just want to highlight the fact that you just made, I think, one of the points I raised, which is in terms of new licenses that are available, the importance of making sure that we're making licenses available to those that have been harmed adversely by the war on drugs. So I think your quote just made that point. But yes, we have a very diverse board that's aware of these issues.
My second question, I'm sorry, to follow up with that.
Yeah,
was,
go ahead, Anthony. Sure.
Can you explain more what the I guess what the thought behind the task force that came out targeting these I-71 shops? Because to me, it seemed like just a very thought out tactic to just wipe them out instead of helping them. So what's your opinion on that, Fred?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get too much into that, but I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think, the task force has been halted. I think we're here, we're having a conversation today. Obviously, I think as I've said, I think we want to find a way to open up additional licenses and find ways for those who've been adversely impacted by the war on drugs, just to work into the system in terms of the medical cannabis licensing system and get individuals on board. But I did want to make it clear that our agency doesn't have any enforcement authority. I do think that's important to note.
Okay, our next is the Groggy Grocer. Go ahead with your question. Groggy. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Fred, for being here and taking some time to answer some of our questions and talk to us. It is appreciated by a lot of us.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
I'm curious, what's with all these extra barriers to entry when it comes to cannabis? You guys, focus on bars and restaurants. It's like, you don't have to jump through all these hoops to open up a restaurant if you want. There's not a limited number of restaurant licenses. There's not like, hey, we can only have 5 liquor stores on one block. Why does it seem, why are we going, this just reeks of handing a limited amount of licenses to large investors versus it just being an industry that's allowed to flourish and put money in the pockets of people here in the community.
Yeah, great question. And I think you just made another point I was trying to make. So, when we inherited this program, it had 8 dispensary licenses. Obviously, since back to February of 2021, we said, that's too little. We need to open things up. So, and I think to Lisa's point, if you look at what we've tried to do with this legislation, we have tried to be creative and innovative. Now, obviously, we have a rider, and we have, I know I keep using the word medical, but that's what I got. No one, obviously, if the rider gets lifted, we'd be talking about adult cannabis sales. But the rider's in place for now. So to the point that was raised, we want to do what we can to allow more small businesses, more residents to get involved in this program.
Okay, one quick follow-up question.
Hey, go ahead.
That kind of goes to your point. So we're sandwiched between 2 states that look very poised to go retail. Why are we putting all this extra effort into creating this like rigid system or format when, if those 2 go recreational, no one's even going to come here for their medical supplies anymore. We have this unique opportunity right now because DC is like the only place, right? We could become like, Nashville is to music or Austin is to just, I guess, weird stuff, People kind of like to come to DC and explore our 71 market. By making these rigid licenses or only a few licenses, we kind of lose that appeal. We have the head start, fortunately, kind of over Maryland and Virginia on a recreational market, whether any of us want to admit that it's a recreational market here or not, Why would we want to lose that,
Yeah, well, I think, no, I hear what you're saying. And I think if you heard what I said, I was talking about that I thought the limit should be in terms of what our agency's proposed, you're looking at distances from schools, rec centers, and distances from other dispensaries. I don't think you've heard me say, let's keep a cap of 8 dispensaries. You haven't heard those words come out of my mouth. So
Sure, sure.
I
I think
think
it was the one on the same street that kind of, the no dispensaries within another dispensary that kind of ticked me on that. But thank you.
no problem.
Yeah. Okay, back to Aaron Rogers. You can go ahead with your question. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I need an extra second. I'm not technology sound. The other thing I want to address is just because you give licenses out or you offer licenses, what's your position on the quality gap? So what I mean by that is what's more important with regards to agriculture? Is it the safety for the consumer, or is it just a controlled program? And I bring that up only because even within the current medical system that you do have and what they do provide, I don't see live soil. I don't see their concentrates are distillate, and there's nothing wrong with that. It belongs on the market. I support that. But you have a lot of cannabis connoisseurs that quite frankly would prefer cleaner, non-butane, more healthier, all naturally grown products that aren't currently being offered by your medical program. And just because you say, hey, anybody can come, doesn't mean that the supply will be filled. Moreover than that, who's filling the supply? Like the best growers, I just don't understand why we don't just go to more of like the young man that was on, that young man who applied is you all should approve him. He's a very good young man. I don't want to call people out, and that's not my place, but I want you to know that young man will do great things with testing. What does it matter if we just give him and he says, oh my God, it's super clean and beautiful, and it's actually better than everything that's currently being available? Why not go to a tax base where you can just collect by saying this is healthy, as opposed to controlled when you don't even have the supply line or the people capable to produce the higher end, cleaner products that consumers want? And thank you for your time again, really.
Yeah, and Aaron, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, and I think you just highlighted the importance of getting testing labs up and running. Obviously, we'll be putting out for testing labs in the next few weeks, but I think you've highlighted the importance of safety and getting testing labs up and running, and I appreciate that.
So, okay, so I want to just butt on that quickly about the testing labs. I know that Steep Hill was here for quite a while, but it was difficult for them to sustain themselves because there was only so many companies that needed to go to them. So for them, the cost to set up a testing lab and everything was quite expensive. And then they only had 8 customers. So it just, I mean, of course they opened the door to anyone, but because we weren't licensed or we didn't have licenses, we didn't have any regulations, there wasn't anything making us go and get our stuff tested. I mean, it's all about your own self-regulation kind of situation. But if you open the door and have all of these 200 companies that need to utilize the testing facility, it makes them more profitable and more sustainable. So I just wanted to bring that up. And
yeah, no, Lisa, I think you raise a good point. So, obviously the district's going to be more attractive to testing labs the more dispensaries we have, right? So if you only have 8 dispensaries, and you're a testing lab, you only have 8 potential customers potentially, right? So I think you're right. If we have more dispensaries and open up the number of dispensaries, I think we become more attractive to testing labs.
Okay, so Mark from Pink Fox, you have a question? Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks, Fred, so much for joining us and giving us some time. It's really nice of you, and nice that the
Thanks, Mark.
City Council and everybody's working towards this goal, a couple years later. So it's really reassuring. I don't have a question so much as I just wanted to echo something, and I did get a couple questions in that question round, so I appreciate you taking your time and answering those. I just wanted to echo that sentiment. There's quite a few of us on this call. Like I've seen Lisa since day one, certainly Alan Amsterdam, lots of folks on this call that have been around from day one. So I understand when you say that a point system isn't the most desired system, but I do hope that you guys factor in and take some recognition in for some people that, have been around for a number of years, who have tax records with the district and with the federal government, who have had their licenses as far as business goes for a number of years. And also take some consideration for the certificate of occupancy. Those will most likely need to change, be updated as, guidelines and regulations and standards come out as far as where a store can be and stuff like that. But I do want to say, as a DC resident for the last 15 years and someone who's kind of operated in this I-71 space for a couple of years now, the last 7, I am really excited.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. And just to be kind of emphasize that point. So clearly our agency is going to be tasked for implementing the bill that's adopted by the council, right? So obviously, your organization can continue to have conversations with the council because ultimately what they pass is what we'll implement. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so I have a few questions that were in the chat, so people didn't want to ask. So I'll just bring them up. The first one says, "Can you please explain the delivery portion of the bill?" So I'm not sure if there's a delivery portion, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So with delivery, there's really, I think, 2 objectives, 2 goals trying to accomplish. So in terms of at least what we've kind of proposed and put out. So clearly we think there's importance on delivery. And so dispensaries would be able to continue delivery both to, residents and non-residents that are in the District of Columbia. And then also we believe that there's an opportunity for third-party delivery. I think, Lisa, you mentioned the corresponding alcohol licenses, where in alcohol we have, an alcohol delivery license here. There's a possibility for creation of a cannabis third-party delivery license that they would just deliver on behalf of cannabis businesses. And that would create potentially an opportunity for a social equity applicant to get in the delivery space.
All right. Let's see. So this isn't a question, it's a statement. I live on Georgia Avenue and I can count 9 liquor stores off the top of my head. And one is right next door to E.L. Haynes Public Charter School. So I guess if whatever regulations they have as proximity to schools and rec centers, it should be similar to the beer, wine, and alcohol. I mean, it's the same. I mean, 21, you're not allowed inside. So I don't know why it would make a difference. But I just wanted to bring that up. Also, someone brought up the cottage industry. I know we have the cottage industry. A lot of people aren't aware of that, but it's basically, home-based businesses and things like that. And so that would probably be something under the micro licenses. So I think that's something that you should consider. I think the craft cannabis home cultivation is also something that would be a cottage industry kind of deal. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. And I do know I spoke to someone who applied for a processor's license in the state of Virginia for his edibles. And he said the application fee was $200 and the license was $200 a year. So that's what we're competing with. And Virginia is, a huge state compared to what we have here. So that has, those application fees are accessible to everyone. And right now, the current application fee is like $5,000, and then you still might not get the license. So basically, that's throwaway money. So it's just not accessible for most people that are right here talking to you today. So I want you to be aware of that.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that.
All
Yeah, I do. A couple of things do want to highlight though on that. So if you look at the bill, it does allow for DSLBD to pay 75% of the licensing fees for a social equity applicant for a period of time. I think it's the first couple of years. So that's in the bill. Just make sure everybody's aware of that.
Okay. Um, okay. Wow. Let's see. Licenses need to be unlimited. Okay, we've already talked about that. Is there? Okay. Okay. Aaron Rogers, you have a question? Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. All right, Rachel, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I thought I just typed it. That's all.
Okay. Go ahead.
My concern is I don't understand why we don't take an opportunity to attract the greatest growers in America. Like, why constrain people to just in this very small 69 square miles? Like, there's a lot of people in Northern Virginia and Maryland that consider themselves DC residents, even though they're not, but we understand. But at least they have capacity and they have space. But then when you start looking even at capacity and space, like, why wouldn't we want to be like the East Coast hub of the greatest growers of America and their ability to showcase themselves here at our city? Now, granted, I understand the testing and things. You just want to know that it's clean. I can't convince you that you're not needed when obviously that would just be a waste of time. But that being said, I don't understand why we're not taking advantage of this by just outright saying, let's go wreck. And then you just tax the hell out of us.
I don't know. Do you have something? You have something to say for that?
No, I mean, the only thing, obviously, while cannabis is federally illegal, obviously there's an issue with cannabis crossing state lines. So, I mean, I think that's why you've kind of seen me highlight, growing cannabis in the district.
I want to add a little bit to that. There are quite a few home cultivators here in the district. There are a lot of craft cannabis growers, and I think we need to utilize them first. But the other thing that I want to say, they did open the door to reciprocity for patients from other states to come in and purchase at our dispensaries, which means they will be taking them home crossing state lines. So it seems like they're condoning that little criminality about crossing state lines. And it might be something to consider when it comes to growing. Virginia and Maryland have a lot of land to grow on, whereas we don't. And it would be great if we could grow more outside, but I know that there's a security concern with growing outside. But it can happen. It can be possible. But also when it comes to growing in the warehouses, I mean, one of the other suggestions we had with the growers was there are people who can't grow in their homes. Maybe they live in an apartment. They want to, or they can't, or they just want to rent a warehouse with 4 or 5 other growers and do it like a cooperative situation where they can either they work together or we each work separately in the warehouse. So that would be maybe they have their own separate license or they have a co-op license or something like that. I just wanted to, put that in your head based on what Aaron was saying about that. Gina Goldring, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. Okay.
Sorry about that. I thought I did. Thank you so much for your time this evening. My question is in reference to if the amendment is passed in December. We know that realistically we've got at least 200 plus I-71 businesses in play as it is now in order to handle the tourism coming into DC and the residents of DC. So it would take at least 18 to 24 months for you guys to get cultivation ready to sustain that type of customer base. In the interim, what is going to happen with the existing I-71 businesses? And is your organization going to get back on board with a task force if that is what the council asks for?
So thanks, Gina. Thanks for being here and thanks for that question. So obviously, we'll see what the final legislation states. I mean, I think our process would be, in terms of just speaking for our agency, if there's some type of opening of dispensaries, licenses, obviously, if people are, applying for licenses and trying to go through that process, we would hope they'd be able to go through that process and get a decision from the board.
Okay. I just wanted to bring up two points to that. It's possible to have provisionary licenses for people that can get something that can still stay in business until the licensing process goes through, or some kind of transitionatory licensing, so the people who have maybe retail licenses right now, or they have a head shop or something like right now, that there should be a easy way for them to transition into a cannabis dispensary license. I just don't like the word dispensary because it just sounds too technical, but I mean, retail is what we're thinking actually, but I just wanted to bring that up. And who's next in line is Cannabis Consult USA. Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for calling on me. Yes, I was basically, we're in the same mindset of what you just mentioned. I think it's best that if you guys really want us to support this, as we really haven't supported anything that's come from the city in the past 3 or 4 years, because we honestly just don't trust you guys. No offense, but after decades of police enforcement of a plant that is imprisoned and ruined the lives of hundreds of thousands of individuals, and now you guys are heading in the direction of trying to ask us to trust you with restricted licensing, which frankly has not worked in any other state. It just hasn't. Restricted licenses in California means that 2/3 of the businesses out there existing right now are gray market and unlicensed businesses. Restricted licenses in Oklahoma means the exact same thing. Restricted licenses in Oregon means that half of the businesses are unlicensed. If you guys want to be trendsetters and be helpful to the minority community, to underprivileged people, the people who are here right now that are bringing in people come to DC because of the I-71 businesses. They spend money in the hotels that you guys tax. They spend money renting cars in town that you guys tax. They spend money on food in town because you guys tax it. To come in and then hand out licenses piecemeal is going to do two things. It's going to create a market in which people are still forced to take care of their employees, of the rent that and leases that they've signed that you guys are not considering at all whatsoever right now, and force them to do things that are outside of the confines of the laws you're trying to implement. And that is counterproductive. We appreciate this meeting that you guys are having us here now, but if you really want to support us as businessmen and men and women, as people who have been pioneers in this space, if you want to be pioneers truly, then you put a system that welcomes everyone. There's no reason at all to restrict access to licensing as relates to this plant. It is a plant. We now know that it is not harmful. We now know that what you guys taught us in school was a lie. We now know that all that stuff was a farce. You guys at the city in DC should be what we think we should be here in this city, is to be pioneers. This city was founded by pioneers. Be pioneers right now and welcome everyone. Everyone that has a license, everyone that wants to pay taxes, everyone that wants to be tested, everyone that wants to be part of the economy. It doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter where they come from. Doesn't matter their criminal history. Doesn't matter everything. As long as they are legal, good citizens and willing to help bring this forward in a way that brings everyone to light, there should be no restrictions whatsoever. There should be less restrictions. We're comparing this plant and the proliferation of it and the usage of it and the passing it around. And I'm not going to say sale of it because we're passing it around in a fashion which sometimes results in a profit for individuals. But more times than not, the purveyors of this plant are paying their bills and paying their staff and providing jobs. This is the I-71 bill has been a jobs program, whether you guys realize it or not. Okay, it's been a lot of payroll taxes, it's been a lot of vacation time, a lot of paid time off from these people that are in this room right now that have given their employees the right set of skills, the right respect to their time, the right amount of money to help them get through college, get through schools, and you guys are threatening to undo that and unravel it in the course of 3 or 4 months with one partially meeting. It's not fair. It doesn't seem like it's going to be contributory to what we need. What we need is more of these meetings on a weekly basis, and ask us what we need, because we are in touch with our patients. They aren't customers, they're patients. Because if you guys have done the studies, even the ones that are getting I-71 transactions, I'll tell you, 60% of them are using them for medicinal reasons. Even the ones that are coming to I-71 stores because they can't afford or can't get what they need in the medical world, or they don't in the medical stores, or they don't like the medical stores, or they need some type of variety. But 60% of them are medical. And I'll tell you, of the 40% that aren't, if you haven't done the studies and what the people who use now recreationally, as we call it, or retail, as Lisa says, thank you, Lisa, for that, because I don't like the word recreation myself, but the retail users of today are the medicinal users of tomorrow. Once this plan is studied the way it should be, the way it should have been the past 20, 30 years without the government cutting it out, we will realize that most of these people that are getting the plant in the ages of 35, 40, 45, 50 are using it for anxiety, are using it for sleep, are using it for eating disorders, are using it for hypertension, are using it for ways that allow them to be functional, productive members of the DC and the greater DC metropolitan area, and helps them be better citizens. Like Lisa said, these people aren't going out and committing crimes. They aren't getting drunk. They aren't having domestic disputes. They're chill, they're relaxed, and a lot of them need it for medicine. And we are in touch with those persons. They come in our businesses. We interact with them. To cut us off is to have them all scattering about and have a lot of people who use this plant for good purposes, scrounging around town trying to figure out what to do to get their medicine. And I think we need to have something that includes us and onboards us in a way that you can allow us to get vetted while we all go through the process together. Thank you for having, hearing me out. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the discussion. I appreciate it. Very helpful comments. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. That was great. Rachel, you have something to say? Question?
Yeah, actually, I'm a Ward 5 consumer advocate here, and the reason why I'm a consumer advocate is because I'm not able to grow. I can't lift buckets and water and things like that. I don't necessarily have a green thumb. It's just not something that's realistic for me. I can't go far. I don't have transportation. I'm limited income. There's people who are federally housed who have to worry about whether they're veterans, elderly, whether they're students, or for whatever reason in DC. And we have to make it accessible to people so that they are not getting in trouble and it's not ruining their entire lives because they're trying to just get through what's going on in the most rational way possible and stay off of any kind of opiates or painkillers or, medications that can really ruin somebody's life for whatever reason. It's these other alternatives are ruining people's lives, even alcohol. And so I have friends who are staying off of alcohol, who have turned to cannabis, and their lives have turned around and they're happy. The stigma has to end with this. If there's anything that you're hearing right now, it's that people want to open up businesses in DC. They want to keep them open and they don't want to get in trouble for this. We're giving you the recipe. We're giving you something that you can turn into an historic opportunity. You can make this something that the rest of the world looks at and says, wow, they actually like listen to the people for once. Like, we're just telling you what all of these people in DC have told us. We put it all together for you and we gave it to you. And to say that, oh yeah, we'll think about that in the future. I mean, we gave it to you. You have it. You know what we want. So at this point, if you don't do it, it's like kind of in a way showing us, like, we want to consider you our friends. And at the end of the day, one way that like our friends help each other. And so you're either going to help us or you're going to hurt us. And in that way, we can be friends if you're going to help us. And so one of the ways that you can help is by taking the plans that we've offered to you as a community, put together and drafted for you, and making that be the outline. It's basically the same thing you're doing already. It's just removing the stigma of what's happened in the past that's hurt so many people. And I'm going to continue, and my friends are going to continue, and everybody's going to continue to buy cannabis on the corner, whether it's coming, whether you're taxing it or not. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I
Does that make
appreciate the
sense?
comments, and I hear you, and that's why I'm here for a dialogue, right? So I appreciate the feedback, and I get it, and I'm here to start the conversation. So I don't think this is the last time we'll be talking.
And I hope we can be friends.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to add one thing before we have a few more questions. But, you know, a cannabis consult said something in the chat about the, you know, I know that the compliance, I don't really even know what they were called. They were going to do, we called it raids, but the compliance committee or whatever, it makes no sense. And this is why we don't trust you, is because they wanted to involve the police in a business compliance situation. And they don't use the police for compliance for any kind of business licensing. So for them to include the police, which have in the past robbed some of the people that are in this room by raiding their pop-up or whatever and taking their supply, if they ever bring up the police again, we need you to say, do not do that. I just want to bring that up because that's crucial. The police never need to be involved in this business kind of situation. And Anthony Cheatham, go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to simply ask Fred, everyone's been saying, but especially what the cannabis consultant, Consult USA had to say, has anything changed in your mindset when it comes to the cannabis industry of DC? And if so, can you please share what those things are so, you know, the people can know that one actually, you know, listening to us and, you know, our voices do, you know, matter in this matter, since we are the ones of the city who, you know, ultimately should be making the decision.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the discussion today highlights what we talked about in terms of the need for adding licenses, right? Whether it's dispensaries, manufacturers, cultivation centers. You know, I think we need to open up the number of dispensaries, obviously making sure that those who've been impacted by the war on drugs, social equity applicants have an opportunity to apply. I think that's all been highlighted here today.
Okay. Cannabis consult, you have another question? Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I did the put my hand down thing instead. Yeah, not so much of a question as a comment to Fred. I appreciate the sentiment, and I'm sure others do as relates to making it so that underprivileged applicants and disadvantaged applicants have a space to apply. But the major way to do that, again, is to put no barrier to applies. You don't need a barrier when you apply to get a license to operate a 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven sells cigarettes. Cigarettes kill 1.5 million people a year. You know how many people die from cannabis every year? None. 7-Eleven sells alcohol. Alcohol kills 500,000 people a year. You know how many people die from cannabis every year, Fred? None. You don't have to answer that. It's a question that answers itself. So the reason that I'm saying that we don't need set-asides is we don't need to police these plants to that point. It doesn't need to be policed at all. It needs to be just released, and yes, it should be tested. It should be known who we're dealing with and what entities they are. But as long as people aren't on active parole or anything worse, legally speaking, they should be able to just go down and apply to be businessmen and women. That way, the barriers that are set up by corporate America that keep women out of these types of businesses aren't one that will exist in DC. That way, the barriers that keep people that are minorities out of these types of businesses aren't going to be one that exists in DC. That way, the barriers that keep people who just want to go make a few dollars to support their families, as hundreds and thousands of individuals who've been locked up in DC over the past 20, 30 years were doing when they were locked up for this plant. You don't have to put any extra set aside. If you want to give grants to help them out, then that's great. But just unrestrict the licensing process. Be a pioneer once again in that regard. Tell the people in the city we don't have to. They're saying we don't need any special licenses for minorities, for returning citizens, for women. Just allow them to go down like everybody else and apply like they're getting a license to open a 7-Eleven. Okay?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, I think, what tried talking about is that try to make it easier to apply. I think we've talked about that in terms of making the application easier. We're trying to remove barriers through a lot of some of the methods we've talked about.
Okay, Hannah C., you have a question? You have to unmute yourself. Hannah? All right. It's the unmute button is in the bottom middle. It looks like a microphone.
Actually had a pop-up blocker that was not allowing me to press my unmute button.
Okay.
I just have one follow-up question, which is, number one, thank you for listening to everybody's comments and concerns. Having heard everything that everyone has been spewing to you over the last hour and a half, what is your idealized plan for moving forward? How many advisors, market experts, market analysts are you willing to work with in the future? This is obviously one of many public forums, but moving forward with ABRA being tasked for all of this legislation, how do you see the next step going?
Sure. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for being here today. So obviously, I think as we've talked, is the legislation hopefully gets passed by the council. Obviously, it's going to be critical for our agency to continue to have a dialogue with stakeholders and organizations like this one, right? So, we obviously don't have all the answers, and talking to organizations such as this one, that's how we can, continue to move forward and make sure that we have the best program we can have for the city. So appreciate being here, and obviously, we'll have to continue that dialogue.
Yeah, the previous experts on the matter was what the public saw as a task force. So the experts that will be guiding you moving forward, hopefully will be people who are in this room or among the industry.
Thanks, Hannah. I appreciate that.
Okay. We have one last question.
One more quick thing before we end. So I just want to add that one way that you can add equity for women would be to charge them the fees equivalent to whatever women get paid on the dollar. So for instance, if white women get paid 68 cents on the dollar, then maybe women pay 68% of the fees. And black women, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the last I heard it was 58 cents. And Latino women are as low as 48 cents. So maybe they should pay 48% of the fees. And that would help. It wouldn't solve the problem, but it would make it a little bit more realistic to be able to, it would just add a little bit of equity for women as well. This wouldn't take away from the equity program. This would be in addition to. This wouldn't be something that you would say, oh, we're taking money away from another part of the program to do this. This is just something in addition to that you would add. You know, this is what we would like to see when fees are an issue, when we're talking about any kind of like licensing or anything like that. So this is something that I've heard women agree that might help in some ways, and you know, just to add a little bit of fairness to the whole situation. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'd have to talk to my board, but I know that the issue of fees and in lowering the barriers to entry is something that's important to them, and making sure that, you know, that the fees are reasonable, or that social equity applicants are, you know, are somehow that not high fees are taken into consideration, and how to deal with that.
So for instance, if a black woman doesn't qualify for the social equity program, she might still be able to get in without a social equity license, because the fee will be adjusted to fit a little bit better into her income bracket.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking.
Okay.
So that's something I'll talk to the board about. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to end it there. And Fred, thank you so much. A lot of people really wanted to hear
Thanks
what
for
you had
having
to
me.
say. No, we really appreciate it, because a lot of people, we just nobody has the answers, and we know you don't have the answers, but we're feeding you what we need, so that you can create the best answers when the time comes. So thank you so much for coming, and you can reach out to us anytime. And we appreciate it a lot. So,
Thanks for having me. This was really helpful. I enjoyed being here. I really appreciate you having me.
okay, great.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
If there's anybody who has any questions for DC Cannabis Business Association, we have a few board members here. We could talk about what we have in mind for our association, and why you should become a member. We have the board members here are Mustafa, Ahmed, James Salt, and Rachel Donlin. And also, Barry, I think, is not here, but I'm sure. And Lauren, maybe she left as well. But if you have any questions, we're here. Barry's here. Go ahead and just speak up.
I'm here. I'm just in background.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? So it was great. You guys, you know that he is part of ABRA, and he's not a lawmaker. So he can't make the laws, but he can create the licensing. And that's why we were here, for the licensing. I know a lot of people are upset about the laws, but you know, we are in a state, and Congress just has a stranglehold on us. And after this last election, it's kind of disappointing that, well, it's not over yet, but you know, Congress, they kept wanting to lift the rider, and they just didn't do it. They just didn't do it. It's crazy, but we do have a stronghold on the Senate now, and maybe the Senate will lift it after the Congress lifts it. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but in the meantime, we have to work with the rider. So just keep that in mind. Barry, did you want to say something? Yes.
No.
Yeah, I think we'll probably, we can post the bill on our website, the Medical Cannabis Amendment Act, and also we can email it out to all the registration people who registered for this event, so you can take a look at that as well. James, you have something to say? Right?
Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say, I'm impressed too what Barry said about just the breadth of involvement tonight, and McDuffie just won this election, and he's sitting on the committee that's going to be overseeing it. I think if we marshaled our energy, we could really create an impact on his thinking if we wanted to like push through like 3 to 4 amendments, or if we want to prioritize certain things about it to enumerate in law what we want to see in terms of the equity piece. I think we have an opportunity to do that if we all kind of worked in concert. He is now at large too, so all of us, at least in the DC area, in the DC city, can speak to him as his constituent now. Anyway, but we have this moment, and it's like the next 3 weeks, right? So I just want to put that out there.
All right. Yeah, Gina, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say if we are going to be, sending amendments to McDuffie or having our voices heard on that part, I think it's going to be very important to have something in place that keeps I-71 businesses safe from any type of action until it can all take place. Because realistically, it's going to be at least 18 to 24 months. It's not something that they're going to be able to have done by February.
Well, he's the one who brought that date up, so I don't know. I mean, maybe it won't take that long. I mean, the medical program is already in place, and it seems. Go ahead, Barry. You have something?
Is there a
Okay.
time frame on that?
No, there's no time frame on anything right now. Nothing's in stone. Oh, okay. So we are speaking with the law firm. I think that they're here, but I'm not sure. What's the name of it, Mustafa? The law firm? Unmute yourself. McGowan and McKinner and McGowan.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
Okay. So we are working with Kinner and McGowan. It's a law firm on the.
We're here, Lisa. Hi.
Oh yeah, Meredith's here. Oh right, and I think I saw John as well. There's so many people here, I can't see everybody, but yeah, they're talking about setting up some kind of transitionary program. So Meredith, I don't know if you have more to say about that, but go ahead. People are here right now.
Well, I don't know that it's so much a transitionary program as trying to work with the existing participants in the market and try to kind of shape. Right now, there's no pathway for ABRA. There's no pathway. There's no rubric for these transitional licenses, right? So it seemed like Fred Masali said that there may be a pathway to kind of create that rubric for the transitional license. And I think that would be really helpful because there's the April 5th date is kind of arbitrary. And I think there's a lot of other ways we can work.
What's that April 5th date you're talking about? What is
April
that?
5th date. So the current print that came out of Kenny McDuffie's, sorry, Charles Allen's committee, said that you have to have a business license, that your business license and your certificate of occupancy have to have been existing as of April 5th, 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
So
right,
that
right.
seems, I don't know what the significance of that date is, but it seems rather arbitrary. So that's one thing I think that there's certainly room for discussion about. But also, as I think a lot of people pointed out tonight, I mean, it really should be, can you do it? If you can do it, if you can, you know, it should be like the alcohol industry. It's just, my concern only is that the council, because Fred kept saying, well, that's something you have to bring up with the council, and is that the council will push back on going too far in the adult use direction. I hope that's not the case. I was actually very encouraged by a lot of the things that Fred said, but as a lot of people also pointed out, he is a member of you know, the government, which we do have to, certainly we've been let down before by regulators in the city and by the council. Yeah, sorry, that's
Okay, so I want to bring up one thing. We will provide the medical cannabis amendment act to everyone to read, and what we're going to then ask is if you have any suggestions on the amendment, suggestions of how they should change the bill, some amendments that we can suggest to them. We'll put together a package and we will give it to Fred McDuffie's office, his committee, and we will provide, we can actually, all the council members have to vote on it anyway. We've already provided them with suggestions on how to provide micro licensing under the medical program. But now that we have, and that was before this Medical Cannabis Amendment Act came about. So now that we have this act that we can draft, that we can read and see what's in their minds, we can create suggestions on how to change it, because they're not us. They don't know what we need, and we need to educate them. So the best way for us to educate them is to provide them with a list of suggestions and amendments to that bill. So we're going to open our doors to that. They give a lot of respect to DC Cannabis Business Association because we've been around for a while and we've been working with them, and they finally said, okay, we're going to talk. So that's great because they've opened the door, and Musali is the one who's going to be signing on the dotted line about the cannabis licensing. So if we want it to roll out right, then we need to give them the tools. So any kind of suggestions you have to that bill after you've read it, please send it to us. I guess we can still use the same Google sheet that we had for this, but we'll put the link on our website. So you don't have to go through and register anything. You can just send us, or you can just email it to us. But we're going to create a document and provide it to them as soon as possible.
Hey, Lisa, I was going to suggest that maybe we, I don't know if Barry would welcome this, but like, I don't know if Barry would be interested in like leading the DCCBA's collection of modifications that we'd want to see. Like, I'm thinking like at our next board meeting, maybe like even delegate like a group of people to like just hash it out. Like, what do we want to, like the 3 things we want to like aim for, and then train our effort, and then try and get like a request into McDuffie's office as quickly as possible. So that if they do have a hearing, I don't know if they will have a hearing. I think they do have to have a hearing. Now that I have to say it out loud for the Small Business Enterprise Committee. Anyway, it doesn't have to be Barry. It could be any one of us. But I'm just like, I'm wondering if there's a way to like shepherd energy into like, let's try to herd these cats into like, you know, the consensus bullet point that we'd want to like then take to McDuffie.
Yeah. That's good. Rachel, you have something that you want to say? Unmute.
Sorry. I'll help with making the Google Sheet and help with making sure that stuff gets online. We just need a list of whatever we need, and I'll help with making sure of all that.
Okay. So the door's open to anybody here or anybody who's not here. If you want to talk to them, if they can submit questions as well. So we want to make it happen. We want them to roll it out right the first time. And it could be groundsbreaking for the whole country if they do it right. And so we need everyone's 2 cents. If you have 2 cents, we'll take it. Because, you know, everybody has different mindset. Go ahead, Aaron. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, actually, can you give me 30 seconds? I literally just walked in the door to say hi to my wife, but I do need to follow up on this. But let me follow up behind somebody, okay? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Anybody else have a question or comment? Until Aaron puts his pants back on. Cannabis, go ahead.
Well, hopefully he's not got his pants off that quick. He just walked in the door. But if that's the way he appreciates his wife, then he loves her. Oh well. All right, guys and girls, listen. I really want to say that it's important that we connect. Rachel, I put a doc right here. I want to connect with you. If you can put your information down there. Anybody else that's a cannabis entrepreneur, aspiring cannabis entrepreneur, a aspiring licensee person in the city, especially those that are doing micro licenses. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur myself, and I understand the trials and tribulations we go through. And I do believe that that this process was at least as we see it right now, meant to be helpful to us. So let's try to take advantage of it and maybe collaborate on what we want to give them as far as requests to what we want change-wise in this bill. That and working with attorneys such as Meredith and them and Lisa, I'm sure we can come up with something that they will at least consider. And if they don't, then we won't support it. So I put a link in there in the chat. So please go and put your information in there so we can get together at least telephonically or on Zoom, if not in person, and try to make sure that our power is make sure that our power is in our numbers and not just in our words. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Aaron, are you ready?
Just want to say I added my information. It's in the chat. So anybody who wants to call me, you're welcome to call at any time. Text or email is fine too. Most likely to get a phone call.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Is this a good time?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so first off, I really appreciated when you gave me a call personally before. I'm very small and I don't have a lot, but I will look into seeing what I can do to support a little bit. It's very small because I'm a very small shop. I do have a simple concern for your committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to be invited on this. I think some of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're asking us to do, because you need that, right? That information to how to make the law better and how to make this better. I think you'll find that there are some resources, not myself, but people smarter than me, that are actually already available to you that have already completed a lot of the work that you're asking and seeking for. I don't know how. I tip my hat to you. I mean this with ultimate kudos. Your organization pulled off what many other organizations have not been able to. Okay, so I mean that with credit when I'm saying my compliment. My concern might be that, for example, certain delegates that you're discussing, I don't know how far to go in my speech, but certain people you're trying to reach out to, other people that are maybe on this call or that you have access to already have a more direct line that might be able to speed up your process. But you seem to have their ear. And so I might recommend coming outside of this group and maybe reaching out to some of the ones that are already more established. And I'm certain that have probably already completed some of this stuff. I would just encourage you to please, if they reach out to you, to please take that call. Thank you very much.
We opened the door and the phone, so they can definitely reach out to us I do believe that they responded to us because we are a nonprofit organization and we have a lot of collective voices, and a lot of people showed up today, which was great because they take us serious. We're a collective voice. We all want the same thing. So they're willing to listen to us. So I think that's, if you're just a one-off, you go walk in the door and you say, this is what I want. They're like, well, that's what you want. That's fine. But when you go in there and you say, this is what 200 people want, it makes what you say that 200 times louder. So I think that's probably why they opened the door for us. And Gina, go ahead. You have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are you guys connected and affiliated in any way with the I-71 committee? I am a member of that committee, and I'm not sure if they had already reached out to you and if you guys have any type of collaboration going.
We've talked to them, but we're not really working together. We're coming at different angles a little bit. But yeah, I know that you guys they started, I don't know how long, less than a year. But yeah, they're out there. Um, um,
I think that when we talked to them, I think that like I'm sorry to interrupt, Lisa.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I was done.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think that when we had that meeting with I-71 committee, I feel like it went really well, and I feel like we're all on the same page, and a lot of the things that they had that we didn't, we filled in, and things that they had that, I'm sorry, vice versa. we kind of both upped each other's games a little bit by having that conversation. So I agree that it's really important for us to reach out to these other groups, and we want those groups to reach out to us as well. And we do want to work with other groups and completely open up the conversation for everybody, since it seems that our ideas do align. We're coming from, again, as Lisa said, we're coming from different angles, but in the end, we have the same idea. So now that we've had those conversations, we're able to kind of fill in the gaps so that when we go and have conversations with the council and with ABRA, we're kind of having a united message, like the entire community wants this. This is, and I think that's kind of what everybody is asking from us to do. And so we have started doing that now that we've launched our membership and our website recently. We've been working behind the scenes for years. We've been kind of waiting for the rider to end. Once the rider didn't end again, we just decided we're just going to come out and start asking for members and start holding meetings and things anyway. And that's why you're hearing about us now. And so they've known about us for a long time because we've been working, I'll say we've been talking with them, whether it's emailing them back and forth or sending them letters over the years. And so ABRA knows who we are, the council knows who we are. People here have been testifying for what? How long ago did you start testifying, Lisa? 8 years ago?
Yeah.
So, I mean, people, I think I testified for the first time in DC 6 years ago. And so, they know who we are. And now that you all know who we are, we hope that you'll give your input. We're going to put an email together for you. We're going to have the link to the bill so that you can look it over yourself. Maybe we can talk in a board directors meeting about possibility of holding a reading of the bill so that we can, something like, we've done things like that in other groups before, reading over the bill and that kind of thing, and it's been successful. So maybe we can think about something like that just to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And there's other things that we can talk about to make sure. In the meantime, we will still keep reaching out and trying to communicate with other groups if they want to communicate with us or not. We welcome that. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much for all that you guys do, and I look forward to continuing to work with you guys in the future. Thank you for this event.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So the one thing I want to say about the Initiative 71, it's difficult to say that you're Initiative 71 compliant because Initiative 71 doesn't allow for sales, and the loophole that we've been able to use, gifting, that started from the beginning. with the pop-ups. And it just blossomed into something that they couldn't really enforce, because literally you can sell anything. And as long as people are willing to pay for it, it's not against the law. We're a capitalist society. So they can't, the gifting is the loophole. And so what we're trying to do now is to work within the means of the confines of the medical program because of the rider. So instead of just, I mean, they can't just open the door for licensing. They have to do it under the wing of the medical program until the rider is lifted. So we don't know when that's going to happen. We've been fighting for that for years. Eleanor Holmes Norton has been fighting for that for years. Even the mayor has been fighting for that. And she's not really pro I-71 business. So, but she's been fighting to lift the rider. And it's not been happening. So it might not happen. So if it doesn't happen, we have to work within the medical program. And that's really the only way they can do that until the federal government makes some changes. So that's what I wanted to say about that. But anyway, our door is open. Please, reach out to us, and we're going to reach out to McDuffie's office and his committee as quickly as we can before they have a hearing, he said, in December. So we want to have that and get it ready before December 1. Okay. Any other questions before we adjourn?
I would just like to make a comment, Lisa. Everything you just said is so spot on. And thank you so much for hosting this event. I think it was a really helpful forum for people to have questions answered. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But they definitely need to hear from us because they're making laws and they don't know what we need.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. So, it's the best way is to tell them.
The louder we can hear your voices by joining together in all capacities, I think that's really important.
Right, right. You guys were great. I appreciate it. Your questions were great. He stumbled over some of the answers, but mostly because he didn't have the answers. He's not the lawmaker. He's just doing what they say. Okay, you have to work within these confines. So we're trying to help him figure out how to work within the confines that the bills is going to be. But the bill is not set in stone. So we need to make amendments to that bill so that it still works for us even more so. So we're going to send that out. Make sure you take a look at it. This is so important. The timing is so important to do this right now. So, don't think you can wait. And we've been like on pins and needles, biting our nails for years. So we got to do it right now. So I hope you guys get that. And the fact that you're here and you're still listening and talking makes me believe you know it's true. So if there's no other comments or questions, I think we're going to adjourn the meeting. And okay, thank you guys for coming so much. Really appreciate it. Oh, all right. You have something to say, Cannabis?
Yeah, Lisa, what's your contact so I can reach out to you? Is it right here, Lisa?
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's in the chat.
Okay.
Scroll up a little bit.
Okay. All right, I see it. Thank you.
Email and the website.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Ellen. Have a good night.
Yep. Look forward to hearing from you guys.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye. All right, James, I think you have to shut it down.